guests not only the beauty and curated gardens, but the beauty and the rich biodiversity of our own native ecosystems. Let's give her a hand.
Okay, wow. Love the mic. This is awesome. So thank you guys so much for being here. Like she said, my name is Olive, and I work at the Tulsa Botanic Garden. So I oversee our Cross Timbers Nature Trail, which is a 100-acre section of our garden. And in the grand master plan of the Tulsa Botanic Garden, this 100 acres will be ecologically restored and will always remain native, which is really cool to juxtapose the, formal cultivated gardens with a very natural space. So I'm just going to give you a quick history of the Tulsa Botanic Garden. In terms of other botanic gardens, we are definitely in our infancy. A lot of times botanic gardens come out of, like the Philbrook Museum. It was some wealthy person's very lovely estate. They donated it to the public garden. The Tulsa Botanic Garden was born kind of out of nothing. In 1999, the executive founders, the garden founders, went looking for a place to find this beautiful garden. And then sorry, I can't read that far. In 2004, 170 acres was donated. And then in 2006, we got our huge first round of funding because Oklahoma was turning 100 in 2007. So there was a bunch of grants open, and we got access to those. And then in 2006, 2007, the trail was made. And then in 2009, we actually opened to the public. And when we opened to the public, it was just a gravel trail around our lake that is at the center of the garden. And the persimmon grove and the nature trail were also open to the public as well. And so it has always been a part of the very beginning of the garden, which is really special. And it has a lot of meaning as to why the garden was placed there in the first place. This picture is our centennial persimmon grove, which has been designated by the state as a 100-year-old living organism. Not that any singular tree in there anymore is 100 years old, but it has been existing there, doing its thing for 100 years. Persimmons are rhizomatic, so it spreads out this way, and that's why you can kind of see the dome. And it is a male grove, so there's no fruit in there, but there's plenty of persimmons throughout the rest of the property. And so if you visit the garden, that's the first thing you'll walk through, and you'll get to stand, and persimmons are very tall and skinny, and they just move in the wind, and they're wonderful. So that's just a brief history of the garden. I always like to start any presentation I give on the nature trail just covering the ecoregions of Oklahoma. I went to the University of Utah for my undergrad and have lived in the Rocky Mountains for part of my life, and a lot of kids there grew up in the Rocky Mountains, grew up in California, and I would get the constant, "Oh, you're from Oklahoma? That's cool." I think people have this misconception that there is nothing going on out here, when actually we have 12 distinct ecoregions in our state, and I think the average is 4. We are at the literal crossroads of so many different ecosystems, the Great Plains, the Cross Timbers, the Ozark Mountains, the Ouachita Mountains, everything. The foothills of the Rocky Mountains and the Panhandle. Oklahoma is a super special state when it comes to the ecological biodiversity, and so I always just like to highlight that. And then you can see kind of in this light green, this is the Cross Timbers. So it is a larger section of the Oklahoma ecosystem, and we get to show the public just a little bit of what that looks like at the garden, which is awesome. So to dive more into the Cross Timbers ecoregion, it is basically where the hardwood forests of the east meet the tallgrass prairie of the west. And so they're kind of doing battle with one another, a lot of people like to say. So it's this really beautiful mosaic of oak forests feathering in to the tallgrass prairie, which is gorgeous. And it's a pretty big ecosystem. It runs from southern Kansas down all the way through Texas. And our garden is in Osage County, technically just about 15 minutes northwest of downtown Tulsa. And we kind of fall into this northern Cross Timbers ecoregion. But the patchwork, because it's really two ecosystems coming together at once, means it's extremely biodiverse, which is awesome. And this map up on the screen is from the Tree Ring Laboratory in Arkansas. And something that we've discovered is that because the conditions are so harsh, a lot of these trees are actually old growth trees. You know, you say an old growth forest and they think of giant sequoia trees, you know, huge up in the coast. And if you've lived in Oklahoma your life, you know that's not the conditions that we get. It is hard living out here. And so these oaks are literally crawling over rocks and sandstone, really dense clay soil. And so they might only be 80 feet tall, but they're 350 years old, which is really, really cool. And because of that, they're not good for timber. They're not easy to harvest. It's horrible land to try and farm on. So it's just relatively untouched. But because it's not, you know, a skyscraper of a tree, people don't think anything of it. But this means it has left a lot of these old growth forests intact, which is really, really special. So today we're talking about wildlife in the native garden, and we have awesome members at the garden, and one of them is Kathy DeRusio. I think I'm saying her last name right. And on Fridays, we have early member mornings, and every Friday she's there with her awesome camera, and she's out on the nature trail taking photos. So thank you, Kathy, for your awesome photos. I'm not a bird person. I like birds, trust me. My philosophy, though, was I'll turn 60 one day, and I will learn about birds. But it might be earlier now, because at the garden we have really beautiful birds. We have really beautiful birds. We have a super dense population of painted buntings and indigo buntings that you can see up on the screen. And the males, I'm learning, are the ones that are flashy. But you see a painted bunting and you're like, whose exotic parakeet escaped from their house? They're so gorgeous. And so there's always plenty to see on there. And then we have a blue grosbeak and a gnatcatcher. And so Kathy just takes awesome photos, but if you're walking around out there, you know, especially those areas where the woods kind of feather into the tall grass prairie, you will see so much action, which is really, really cool. And then we also have a really dense population of Asclepias viridis, and then also some antelope horn milkweed. And so this is super essential for the monarch migration that comes through. And we had a big monarch event a couple weeks ago, and somebody from the Monarch Society said that with the density of milkweeds that we have in combination with our oak trees, it's very possible that we could have a roost in the foreseeable future, which would, you know, just blow my mind, make my heart explode. So it's a really, really, really cool thing to see, and that green milkweed is just gorgeous as well. So in terms of what is happening out on this nature trail, it has been relatively untouched since 1999. One of the original board members kind of carved the trail, and then that's been that. There's like, hey, there's a 1 mile trail out there, go check it out. But up until 4 months ago, when it became my job, no one's been in charge of this area. So we're really battling woody encroachment, and the tall grass prairie section is just getting overrun with eastern red cedars, winged elms, and then of course beautiful Chinese privet has made its way and is really conquering a lot of space. So part of my job is making the management plan to figure out how to tackle this and what to do. Prescribed burning is going to be the key tool that we're going to use to try and tackle this. So we've been preparing for our first prescribed burn, which is super exciting, and we're going to use the trail as a fire break itself. So we've gone through and we've been using a method that they like to call stuff and burn. So we'll go through and cut down a bunch of cedars and stuff them up, ones that are still living. So you get 2 for 1 BOGO on dead cedar trees, which is awesome. So we've been going through and just preparing as much as we can, getting that fire break ready, and we'll do the initial burn will be about 19 acres, which is awesome. So between the forest and the tall grass prairie, I'd say it's kind of 50-50, maybe a little bit more woods. So it's definitely the first baby step into managing it and getting the tallgrass prairie back to looking like its glorious self, but it's super exciting as well. So we'll focus on that tallgrass prairie section for now, and we're burning at the end of the season, actually, because research shows you will get different results depending on when you burn, which is really cool. And if you do a late season, late summer, early fall burn, you're gonna actually end up promoting your forbs, your flowering perennials, and kind of cutting back on the grasses a little bit, and then obviously you'll wipe through most of your woody stuff as well if the fire burns hot enough. So my hope and plan is that the trail system will expand, but we'll also kind of have that whole area be a living research station to where guests can walk through, and it's like on one side of the trail, we're gonna burn every 1 to 3 years in the fall. And on this side, we're gonna burn maybe every 2 to 5 years, and we're gonna burn in the spring. And it'll be a way for people to really see the differences and understand how you can use fire as a tool and get completely different results, which is awesome. Right now, we're just that one? Okay. Oh, we're back. We're managing specifically for bird populations. Just like Katie mentioned, a lot of these tallgrass prairie birds just don't have the habitat that they need anymore. So we're going to kind of hyper focus on that area for the foreseeable future. And luckily our oak forest, it needs some thinning, but it hasn't been completely overrun the way the prairie has. And we're working on applying for a recreational trails grant through the state, which will allow us to do some much needed trail restoration and hopefully expansion down the road. And so we're definitely at the kind of ground zero. And the plan is, you'll see if you go to any public garden, education and signage is just a pillar. People come there to learn, they want to know what's growing, what's going to work well in their gardens. And so we just hope to continue that theme throughout the tallgrass prairie section and through the woods as well. So as soon as you step into the nature trail, you're learning all about the cross timbers, you're learning about key species, and you're learning about the cultural significance and all that stuff. So it'll be really, really cool to see. And then I always just like to give a shout out to those who have helped and have come before me. This is a picture of our post oak on the nature trail, actually, and we're hoping to have the University of Arkansas Tree Ring Laboratory come out this fall and take some core samples so we can get some actual numbers on it. But I'm thinking it's definitely over 100 years old, and who knows how old it is, so it'll be good to get some specifics. But when I first got handed this 100 acres, I had people from the Nature Conservancy come out, and they were a huge help getting my head wrapped around what land management looks like, what areas need to be tackled immediately, how to use volunteer help. And then for this burn, we're actually partnering with an organization called Oaks and Prairies Joint Venture. And they are a conglomerate of, wildlife biologists. I think some state people work there as well, but they have a grassland restoration incentive program that literally pays private landowners per acre to ecologically restore it. So there's some, I have their link put up there if you want to explore more into that, but they're going to help us perform this burn, bring out the tools that we need, and then we're getting paid $20 per acre that we burn, which is really cool. So if you're a private landowner and need kind of some assistance in that realm or need some guiding lights, they're an awesome organization. Oklahoma State University is obviously a huge pioneer when it comes to prescribed burning and land management. So I'm going to have some undergraduate senior capstone students come out this year, and they're going to help me kind of survey the land, make a management plan as part of their senior project. And then the University of Oklahoma has been fairly involved since the beginning. In 2007, they did a vascular survey and found nearly 250 different species on the land. And for the next couple years, we have a grad student and a professor coming out to do another vascular survey. So that'll be good data for us to compare what's changed, what's the same, what are we dealing with. And so it's always good to have that academic research behind you. And then Tulsa River Parks. Ryan Howell is the project manager of Turkey Mountain, and if you have been to Turkey Mountain anytime recently, you can see it's a world of difference. So he's been a big help in figuring out trail restoration, dealing with erosion, all sorts of stuff. And Quail Forever is another awesome nonprofit. We've had some of their biologists come out and help us survey the wooded section and get our heads wrapped around what needs to be thinned, what should stay, and how we can kind of tweak it to support bird populations. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the recreational trails grant. So that'll give us some much needed funding. The garden is a nonprofit, so we're fighting for every penny. And then, of course, I didn't want to just talk about, my nature trail that I love so much. I asked a bunch of our staff what their favorite native plants are. And so these are classics. You'll see these all over the garden, which is awesome. Purple passion flower. We had a guest come up actually recently, and they're like, there's this worm, and it's all over the flower, and it's decimating it. And we were like, actually, it's a butterfly, and we explained, the native fritillary, and it's supposed to, and that's why we plant it. But we love our guests, and it's always an opportunity to teach. Echinacea pallida, golden finches love these as well. Just like we'll sit up on those heads and rip out the seeds. It's like my favorite thing to watch. Silphium, compass plant. That's another one that can get really big and kind of take over if you're not careful, but just huge pollinator attractor. The birds love it. And Silphium has roots that can reach up to 12 feet in the ground. It's a really, really, really cool plant. Asclepias tuberosa butterfly weed, that's a classic. The orange is just absolutely gorgeous. Can't miss it. Prairie blue-eyed grass, that's actually Jacob's favorite over here. Jacob is another curator at the Botanic Garden. And then coral honeysuckle. So it's always a double-edged sword with, Japanese honeysuckle. Most people have like really fond childhood memories of it. It grew on my grandma's fence. And then once you realize what it is, you'll never be the same. And then just some resources and tidbits here and there. This is a painted bunting on that compass plant. This is just right outside our visitor center, which is awesome. So, but the Tulsa Botanic Garden, our website is tulsabotanic.org. If you come out to visit the Cross Timbers Nature Trail, we have plant guides. So we have some physical copies in our visitor center, and we have a digital one as well. So you can go up there with your plant guide, do some identifying and explore, which is really cool. And then there's my email, olive@tulsabotanic, if you feel so inclined, if you have any questions or anything like that. And then I'm also curator of our Arboretum, which is opening this fall. So in just a couple weeks on October 10th. So that Arboretum will kind of be between our children's garden and our floral terraces, and we'll have a collection of oaks, maples, dogwoods, redbuds, witch hazels, and so that'll be really, really awesome to see open. And then we are going to have a public hearing for our recreational trails grant. It's a part of the application, so that'll happen on Saturday, October 19th. And if you have the chance to come to that public hearing, you can put input on what you would like to see happen on the nature trail, how would you like to see it expand and grow, and then you'll get a tour by me, and you'll get free admission for the rest of the day. So if you've never seen the garden before, that'd be a good way to see it and enjoy it for free. And yeah, thank you guys. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like I've been talking like a crazy person. Yeah.
Do you ever isn't it a thought to let public see how their plants go wrong in the landscape? Because a lot of what I hear is like, no, not mine. Mine would never escape my yard. But if they got to see how horrible it is, like I have a battle with my mother. I don't get to win, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's like if they could just see how their privets and honeysuckles are just, causing such massive problems, that maybe it would help steer more people into being wiser with their choices and or ripping out what's already in their yard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good part, that's where social media can play such an awesome role. And so luckily we have a great social media team, and yeah, getting in there. I mean, our Centennial Persimmon Grove, which is like the reason where the garden is where it is just like getting overrun with privet. And so it is an opportunity to teach people and to show like, yeah, it does what you want it, but it is so easy for it to get out of hand. And I think just being, especially dealing with the public, you can be a little more rough with your family members, but trying to be gentle and explaining, you know, the ecological significance and, you know, explaining like, well, you could have, you know, Japanese honeysuckle, or you could have our native one, and you're going to support, you know, pollinators, hummingbirds, and kind of give them the wow factor of why to go native and steer them the other way, and being nice, which is kind of hard sometimes. Yeah. My favorite pollinator this year? Ooh. That's a good question. I think this year we had this was last year, kind of at the end of the year, we discovered this aster that we have, and it's a cultivar, but it's called Radon's Favorite, and it blooms way, way late in November, and there are just pollinators all over it. And so Jacob and I actually went through, took a bunch of cuttings, propagated in our greenhouse, and I think we planted like 100 of them all over the garden just to try and get them everywhere. And that one I really like because it sticks around super late for when food sources are a little low for pollinators. Yeah.
After your dry burn, are you going to do anything to encourage native plants or discourage invasive species seeding?
Yeah. So after our prescribed burn, we're definitely going to have to, you know, it'll be a continual process, more than one. So we'll go through and we'll probably continue to cut down cedars. The one saving grace of cedars is once you cut them down, they're gone. It's not like a calorie pear that will shoot up a million suckers and never leave you alone. But we are definitely going to have to go in with chemical applications on some stuff, with trying to be cognizant, obviously, of pollinator populations and stuff. We're going to be pretty light-handed on it. And one method that gets used in land management a lot is called hack and squirt. And so you can go up to a tree with a hatchet or an axe and dig into the cambium layer and then put the herbicide directly in. So that way you're not just broadcast spraying like all over the leaves. And that way you can be super selective. But with the level of invasive species and just the acreage, there's definitely going to be some more tools, and chemicals are a part of that. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys so much. I know we're in Oklahoma City, and there's probably a lot of Oklahoma City folks, but like Katie said, if you're traveling around, go up, see the Arboretum in Kansas, come down the other side and see us in Tulsa. And yeah, thank you so much.